We are working on how do we help our customers create the best of plant-based proteins, cheese, etc., since we know those are the categories that consumers see as most attractive and most sustainable. But at the same time, there's something to be said for just really wanting a good grilled cheese sandwich. And we hope we'll have both choices as we work with our customers for the future. So we're not only prioritizing plant-based, but working on how can we help make dairy more efficiently and more effectively. We've been able to provide customers with up to 99% reduction in carbon emissions versus what they were using through commodity dairy. So there's huge opportunities, I think, in both dairy and plant-based, and we're sharing learnings across those, which to me really is about that kind of shared economy perspective and what we're, I think, seeing the food industry move towards, right? How can we make it better together?
Hi there, food enthusiasts. My name is Chris Ruchkowski, your host today for the FutureFoodCast, where we talk with thought leaders in today's food industry and discuss the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of food. Very, very happy today to be speaking with Shanon Coco. She is the Strategic Marketing Director for Food in North America for Kerry. Welcome to the program today, Shanon.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm so excited to talk about the future of food with you.
Excellent, excellent. And I've had a great privilege to speak with you a little bit before this and learned a lot about what Kerry is doing in sustainability and technology all over the world. But before we dig into that, let's give our audience a little bit of background on you. Tell us where you came from before Kerry and maybe some of the work you've done in Kerry before coming into your current position. What brought you there?
Sure. So I'm currently the Strategic Marketing Director for Kerry for Food in North America. As you mentioned, Kerry is a global company, and I've been with them a little over 6 years, actually starting my career with Kerry in our Irish office, I should say, in Naas, Ireland. So that's our homestead. That's where Kerry was born and bred in Ireland, and I was fortunate enough to get to work in consumer insights there, really understanding the categories, consumers, what drives them, and then building my career out into more of the technology space, since we are leaders in taste as well as nutrition solutions, and now getting to take on a role as the lead for food, which I love. Everybody loves food, so it's a great area to be in and allows us to really connect, food innovation and technology with the challenges and opportunities that the market has, from sustainability to plant-based to more functional and nutritious foods. My background before joining Kerry, I actually worked mostly in higher education. So I started my career out working for a number of universities across both the US and Ireland for MBA programs and admissions, and really getting to connect with people. And I think that love of anthropology as my study and my bachelor degree is in, as well as that experience working in higher education with people as they really find themselves, who they are and what they care about, is really what drew me to marketing ultimately. So after my own soul searching after that career, I went back and did my own master's in marketing and UCD Smurfit Business School in Ireland. I was living there at the time, and then was fortunate enough to get to work in market research. So through both that course and afterwards, I worked with people across industries, from banking to food to startups to nonprofits, and really gave me an opportunity to complete market research, digital, a wide range of marketing areas, and ultimately was able to find Kerry and food through that opportunity to work on the agency and consultation side. So I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to evolve with Kerry, as we're always evolving quickly, and excited to talk about kind of what comes next for us and for the rest of the industry.
Excellent. Well, that's a great background you bring with you, and Kerry is certainly lucky to have you on board as both your span of expertise, but also being a global person yourself. So that's great. But, Kerry is a big global company, but maybe there's people out there that don't know all of what Kerry's doing. And kind of before we dig into the sustainability and all these other things that we're really interested to talk about, tell us a little bit more about Kerry. What is Kerry doing out there in the world?
Sure. We're doing a lot, Chris. I'm not going to lie. But we are the world leader in taste and nutrition. And that's really what we share with our customers, we share with the market. But what does that mean? To me and to us, it really means that every day we go to work and we're focused on how can we make things taste better and more nutritious. And sustainability has really become a key part of that for us as well, as we think about the future and what does food look like. We are actually operate in more than 30 countries around the world. We have manufacturing sites in over 150 countries. But what I'm most proud of is that as a company, our commitment is to food innovation, but bringing that through the lens of creation, through applications. So we have more than 1,000 research and development scientists around the world who are actively working on how do we make plant-based products, as an example, that not only taste good, but are going to have that cheesy, ooey gooey melt, that proteins that are going to have that rich umami and savory taste without off notes. So they're tackling those challenges that we really are creating the best of both taste and nutrition through, yes, innovation and new technologies, science-backed solutions, but also making sure that it's fit for purpose for our customers and ultimately the people that are going to enjoy our food. So that's what gets me excited about kind of the way we operate as a company.
Excellent. So Kerry's really bringing, if you will, sort of a lot of the background into food products. Some of them are visibly Kerry products, but some you're essentially business to business company helping with the technical food solutions that other food providers are also using to bring their products to market.
Absolutely. We are the science-backed solutions. We are the tasty ingredients that make you want more, craveability, and also create those new profiles that we all get excited about putting on our Instagram and sharing with our friends and getting them to go try.
Great. Well, maybe a good segue into the topic of sustainability and what that means for Kerry, which I found interesting in talking to you before. So my understanding, Kerry probably got its start in the dairy products sector in Ireland and grew up in many, many different ways from that. And one thing you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago is plant-based products and related to cheese. So Kerry, in its DNA, is a dairy products company, but it sounds like one of the areas that you're really focusing on today is plant-based dairy products. And maybe tell us about why that is and what you're doing in the space.
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. And I think one that anyone whose heritage is in the dairy space, wants to have the best of both. So we did start out as an Irish dairy cooperative in County Kerry, which is fun to say, Ireland. We've evolved significantly from that, but I think what's really stood to Kerry in terms of our dairy heritage as a taste nutrition company is our commitment to making sure the product tastes good, performs well, and delivers on nutrition. And I think what we've focused on in evolving that through our focus on plant-based is how can we make it more sustainable too? So as an example, we are working on how do we help our customers create the best of plant-based proteins, cheese, et cetera, since we know through our own global sustainability research that those are the categories that consumers see as most attractive and most sustainable. So we want to help them embrace those categories, right? And bring that to expand their dietary options. But at the same time, there's something to be said as well for just really wanting a good grilled cheese sandwich. And we hope we'll have both choices as we work with our customers for the future. So we're not only prioritizing plant-based, but working on how can we help make dairy more efficiently, more effectively. So we have a range, for instance, called Ultra Clean, which is really about delivering that concentrated dairy taste that has the impact and taste of a flavor, but labels as dairy and dairy ingredients. And not only were we able to achieve that through our innovation, but being able to also create it so that it's more sustainable. So we've been able to provide customers with up to 99% reduction in carbon emissions versus what they were using through commodity dairy. So there's huge opportunities, I think, in both dairy and plant-based, and we're sharing learnings across those, which to me really is about that kind of shared economy perspective. And what we're, I think, seeing the food industry move towards, right? How can we make it better together?
Right. Well, we're going to dig into some of these areas that you're focused on that you've been talking about, but I wanted to ask, why does Kerry focus on sustainability? Is this internally driven? Is it externally driven? Is it both? Why not focus on more profit now.
Profit, we all enjoy. That's absolutely right. We all want to be here in 10 years, 20, 50 years from
Yes.
now. But if we don't prioritize sustainability, we may not be able to. And that I think is
Right.
just a real, I'm a very realist type person.
Mhm.
And to me, that's kind of where the bottom line comes down to. If we're not making choices now and continuing to just increase our commitment to those choices over the next 5 and 10 years, we as an industry aren't setting ourselves up for success and our consumers up for success. So for us,
Mm.
sustainability really is about prioritizing three things. How can we make products and help our customers make products that are better for people, right? So in terms of the nutrition, the health choices that they make as they look for more functional foods. How can we make products that are better for society, right? So how can we make sure that where we're sourcing from, who we're partnering with, really is embracing, the communities that support the food economy globally. And then the third thing for me, I'll put my three up, is better for the planet, right? So if we're not thinking about zero waste to landfill in our plants, if we're not prioritizing how we can optimize so that we are more energy efficient, and if anything, offsetting some of our energy, right?
Mhm.
And working on how we reduce water consistently, we're going nowhere. So we have very clear commitments that we've made in terms of scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, in terms of water intensity, in terms of committing to zero waste to landfill by 2025, and making sure that 100% of our raw materials are sustainably sourced by 2030 as well. So we have a 2030 commitment that anyone can certainly find the details of on our website. It's called Beyond the Horizon. And for us,
Mm.
that's about being able to see beyond that horizon of 2030 in the food industry.
Excellent. Well, it's an amazing corporate commitment that you and the other leaders in Kerry really seem very passionate about. I'm curious, how does that impact your customer relations, and what are your
Mm.
customers saying to you about sustainability and the importance of that in their products?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation we're actively seeing both customers bring to us as well as proactively bringing to them. Many of them have made commitments. Some are very strict and very clear in what they're looking for, and I think others are kind of figuring out where can they make the most impact, right, based on their processes, based on their products. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a two-way dialogue. We are fortunate enough at Kerry to actually have a sustainability team as part of our Kerry structure. So we have a global team as well as people within North America and our other regions whose role is really to make sure we are driving towards these goals on a day-to-day basis in our operations, but also supporting our customers. So as we understand what they're committing to, or as they need guidance, maybe even on how they commit,
Mhm.
we can really help them navigate that and navigate how Kerry can help them reach their goals best, right?
Mhm.
Because ultimately, it's great if we have commitments, but working with our customers, we want to make sure that we're addressing their commitments ultimately, since they're making the
Yeah.
final product.
So this sounds very much like a key selling point for Kerry. How did this happen? I mean, we weren't talking about this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
From your experience, how did sustainability become such a key selling point for a global company like Kerry?
This is just my own perspective. I think there's two things that I've seen Kerry do to really evolve how we've played a role in this conversation. I think one, and this is purely my perspective, is our Irish influence. So Ireland as a country is very sustainability focused. They have an organization called Origin Green, which Kerry's actually a founding member of, and that's been in existence for more than 10 years, I want to say. It's actually a government based organization that's all about the commitment of the agriculture and farming practices in Ireland to creating a sustainable future in terms of agriculture. So
Hmm.
Kerry has been part of that conversation right alongside Ireland as they've developed that. And I think that is one way in which we've really been early in that conversation, earlier than a lot of other players, and as one of those founding members. The second
Mhm.
area that I would call out is our commitment to nutrition. And so, sustainability, depending on who you ask, can mean many things, but sustainable nutrition for people, right, and making sure we're helping people enable healthier choices is something that's really integral to who we are. So, we actually have an organization called the Kerry Health and Nutrition Institute. It's part of our Kerry business, but is actually not related to our direct business at all. It's actually includes councils and people and experts that we lean on from academia, from regulatory bodies, from yes, even our own nutritional scientists internally, and completely separate from our day-to-day business. That organization, the Institute, really is about progressing nutritional research, science-backed findings, what the regulations in terms of nutrition will look like in different countries as those evolve, and making sure that we're a free and accessible resource to the food industry, in helping people make the science and health, helping people make health and science-based choices more accessible to their consumers.
Excellent. Well, certainly a tremendous amount of effort by Kerry on the sustainability side. And clearly it seems that's because that's what consumers, and in this case, your B2B customers, are demanding. And that's great to see, especially for a podcast where we are focusing on food and sustainability.
Absolutely.
Really, really encouraging. In this podcast, I have a great opportunity to speak with a lot of early entrepreneurs that just have tremendous passion about sustainability. But although it's certainly come into a lot of large companies, I feel like it shines through very, very strongly with Kerry, and just a key selling point for the company. So that's great to see.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure. Now, we've touched on a few general areas of sustainability. You mentioned plant-based, hugely trendy, waste reductions becoming more important. What do you see from your position, kind of a global perspective, although you're responsible for North America, as the key trends in food and sustainability that we're looking at in the upcoming years?
It's a great question. I'm going to attempt to share my screen if I can, to show you what we're finding that's really evolving and I think challenging how that spectrum of adoption can look globally. Let's see if I can get my
I think we'll probably get it going.
Okay, so let me just zoom in here. Share screen. So
there we go.
Chris, you were asking, what does the future look like and what are we seeing? And as I heard you ask that question, this stood out to me as a really great way for us to think about it. We do complete quite a bit of proprietary research, both regionally as well as globally at Kerry. And one of the areas that I'm thrilled that we completed a global research project over 30 countries around the world last year was on sustainability. We called it Sustainability in Motion because it is constantly evolving and every country is in a different place. And when I think about what does the future look like, these are kind of the three buckets that I actually see our opportunities and commitments across the board looking towards. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, if my screen is still sharing all right, extrinsic. So these are all of the things that we find for those that are maybe early into the sustainability adoption cycle are embracing, right? So they may be buying a product and seeing that it's a sustainably packaged, and it might be more passive at first, right? Or they may start to really say, wow, I'm noticing that there's opportunities for me to buy fair trade, right? There's opportunities for me to buy products that are sourced from certain locations. And so this is really, I think, where a lot of our consumers are starting their journey. What's interesting and exciting to me as we think about what's emerging is that consumers who are more involved in sustainability as they're progressing through this adoption are really taking on much more personal responsibility. So it no longer just becomes about the product or the package. It actually also starts to evolve past the product and moves to the space where they're really prioritizing how are they making an impact, yes, on themselves and their sustainability, their personal health and nutrition. How are they then translating those choices into, right, where they're putting it in from a food waste perspective and how they're getting rid of it
Hmm.
essentially, right? And then
Hmm.
what other choices can they make that can help them just, again, kind of combine their preferences, right, between health, food waste, and optimization from more of an environmental perspective, and then stacking on those clean label, plant based, non
Hmm.
GMO claims. And there is a balance that we've actually found, depending on the category. There's kind of a sweet spot where consumers are more open to certain areas. So
Hmm.
functional beverage is a great example where we've seen consumers, I think, really start to adopt this type of space
Hmm.
around prioritizing their nutrition, but also wanting to be more conscious in terms of the types of products, labeling, and formats that they're purchasing.
Right.
Busy
This
afternoon
is
here. Sorry.
This is great to see. Obviously a very well organized internal effort across a global company looking at sustainability. And I love the way you've termed the left side, the extrinsic side, table stakes. This is the basics. This is what you
Yeah,
need just to be at the table. And these are the other areas that you're adding on to that you're then ahead of the curve that you see growing globally. And it's so encouraging to see that these are, probably look ahead 5 years, all these will move into table stakes, and then we're going to have even more activity out there.
exactly. I think back, my other side adjacency to share with you would be back in 2017 was the first time I think we did a complete global study on clean label. Right. And
Mm.
I think back to that, how that was totally game changing in terms of the conversations that we were hearing and seeing as an industry around
Hmm.
clean label. What does it mean? What do we prioritize? And I think, yes, you're still seeing that emerging here, but it's shifted so significantly from that
Hmm.
time 5 years ago to, what's the role of functional food, I think, really coming to the fore in the
Mm.
last few years. And what's exciting, I think, today, as we look through the future, is it's not just about one of those. One of my colleagues, he always used the term stacking claims, right? What are
Hmm.
you prioritizing? What are you stacking? And really trying to find the right consumer for the right moment and the right product
Right.
together.
So you mentioned that even from 5 years ago, um, for example, the topic of clean label has changed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that we've found in this podcast is maybe it's more of an industry insider term, clean label, but it's becoming more well known with end consumers in food stores. But what does clean label mean today for Kerry and Kerry's customers?
Mm. That's a tricky question, Chris, that I still feel like I don't have a clear answer in my own head on, because I do think it so much depends on what life stage they're at, right? What they're
Hmm.
prioritizing. So I think clean label, when I've seen it for, say, a parent who's purchasing for their children, is much more focused on the quality of the ingredients, the processing of those ingredients, and what that label ultimately looks like in terms
Hmm.
of friendly ingredients.
Okay.
That versus, say, what I'm seeing with a lot of the Gen Z and millennials who, even in some cases, scandalous opinion here from what our research has shown, some of them even don't see sugar as much as a demon because they're seeing it, okay, maybe it's not a demon because they're prioritizing more of balance and
Hmm.
purchasing choices that maybe are no added sugar, right? Or reduced sugar in how they're
Sure.
created. So I think depending on the demographic and depending on the category, it's still not an answer I probably can give you a clean one too, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen what you're describing in across the range of podcasts that we do, and that sustainability means different things for different people and different
Mm-hmm.
companies. Because Kerry is so big, I think it encompasses a lot. But for some companies, it's all about upcycling food. For some
Yes.
companies, it's waste reduction or supporting smallholder farmers. But again, I think it's interesting to see the Kerry perspective just because you do have such a large product line. And yeah, and also showing that it's a fluid field. Sustainability as a topic
Definitely.
is fluid and changing all the time. And you've outlined it perfectly in this slide. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. I'll stop sharing in case I get any more
Okay.
pop-ups there.
Well,
Oh,
you mentioned also, part of the clean label, of course, is how you're presenting that label. And all this effort is great. But if you can't talk to people about it, if you can't help them understand it, it's not effort wasted, but the consumer or your business partners don't really know what's going on. So that brings up a topic of transparency and trust in food labels and food products. How is transparency integrated in the work that you do and Kerry does with its customers?
It's a great question as well. I think the way that we integrate transparency is making sure that as we're working with our customers, we're clear on what their guidelines are first and foremost, right? What do they see as the critical factors when they're making choices and creating a product? Because I think that is always our starting point, right? For making sure we are providing them with the right solution based on where they are in the world, the types of products they're in. So first and foremost, I think transparency with our customer is most critical, on both of our ends. I think the second piece for us is around our sourcing, right? So from partnering on the Sustainable Spice Initiative to sourcing grass-fed dairy from our heritage in Ireland to turn that into nutritious, complete proteins that we utilize in beverage and infant formula, et cetera, to exclusive partnerships like Cafe Femenino, which is actually a partnership with a women-owned coffee organization where they're global farmers, and it's really about supporting women as entrepreneurs in the coffee business and being a partner so that we are actually buying their beans, roasting them, and working with our customers to make sure that we can support these communities. So I think those are just a few of the ways we're really trying to prioritize areas where we have strengths and where we've built partnerships. There are so many more. But I think transparency first and foremost is about us making commitments on the back end as we're procuring, as we're working with suppliers to make sure that we're there with them, right? And I have a colleague who literally is in the fields of lavender in Eastern Europe, sourcing the lavender that becomes the lavender extract, which I would be happy to go with her anytime to do, and so everything from being there with the suppliers to making sure our customers are clear on how we process and what benefits we're able to provide based on what they're targeting. And then making sure, what I think especially emerging and startup brands maybe look to us for a little more guidance is making sure it's fit for manufacturing purposes, right? They have created amazing products in their kitchens, in their garages, and even in commercial kitchens, right? As they're getting up and running. And, as they scale, being able to work with someone who can help them understand if they need, as they may need to evolve formats or processes, how can they make sure they keep that taste or that texture that they've spent their time and love and passion in, to make sure that they can achieve it. That's where I think that maybe people overlook in that process, especially as they're starting out, but is critical because as you're gaining that success, being able to scale without losing any of the quality, the transparency, et cetera, that our customers have built, is really something that I think we do behind the scenes and probably don't talk about much, to be honest, but is a great way that we can partner and help them through that process.
Well, it's certainly a great strength that Kerry brings to your customers and partners of, like you said, helping a company scale its products. Hard to move from an amazing product made in a home kitchen into, distribution across a nation or a continent. And your expertise certainly comes in great there. Looking, for example, you have Cafe Femenino and probably many other examples like that. And today we know for sure that consumers are very interested to know these stories. How do you, whether it's Kerry or Kerry's customers, how do you see end consumers, people like me who are buying these food products, how are they receiving that story? Social media is big, packaging is big.
Yes.
What do you see as the key channels that consumers are actually enjoying that transparency?
Yeah, I definitely think that social media plays a huge role in this. Referring a friend used to probably be the main way. I think this has become our new refer a friend in a lot of ways to get people on to new products and in areas that they care about. So I think first and foremost, that's an area that we've seen a lot of consumer chatter. And even as we're working with customers to kind of better understand where should they go, we can help them
Hmm.
listen. Social listening is something out there, right? To understand
Hmm.
what are consumers talking about and what's happening out there. So I do think social media, I think packaging has a big role to play with it. We've seen some customers go to the extent of even have a, find your source. Patagonia is known for that,
Right.
being able to source how they supply. There's a great company in Ireland that you can actually, they'll put what potato field the potatoes were sourced in, and actually who at their manufacturing site packaged the
Hmm.
potato chips as well.
Wow.
So I think there's some great examples of truly, the utmost transparency, and there's lots of difference depending on customer scale. Some may be more possible than others, but I
Hmm.
think finding a way to connect your consumer to that source, whether it's through those stories, through social media, through packaging, is something they're going to expect more of. And we're seeing, I would say the bars category is a great example of where they've really embraced this. So
Hmm.
there's even a product called This Bar Saves Lives, right? And so very front and center when you're standing at a shelf that you can see if that's something you care about and you
Hmm.
understand, how does it save lives? You may pick that up to better understand what the product is and how that may or may not align with what you're looking for in a product.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly building trust behind that is its own challenge.
Hmm.
But as you said, sustain or transparency, it seems like it's not quite there yet in terms of you go to a store and you really expect that you'll see what's in the product and believe it. But it
Yeah.
seems like we're on the track of that happening, so that I could imagine in the next 5 years, if you go to buy a product and you can't feel
Hmm.
that you understand where it's coming from, maybe you might buy something different. Do you perceive that as a shift in consumer expectations, maybe?
I do. And I think a big driver of that as well is the sustainability commitments that we're seeing a lot of our customers in the industry make, right? So
Hmm.
I think over the last 5 years and certainly into the next 10, 15, 20 years, we've seen companies make very clear commitments. So I think as those come to fruition, the results of those, right, that water reduction,
Hmm.
emissions impact, sourcing commitments that they're continuing to evolve as well as carry, I think that will provide the industry the ability to feel even stronger about the transparency that they're providing to consumers than some
Mm.
may today, since they may feel they're just not as connected to that story yet. And I know I always lean on our sustainability team to really help me validate, is this a story or is this something that truly is making an impact that we can really communicate and help our customers make an impact around, because I think there's
Yeah.
a spectrum there as well.
Right. Right. Well, as we look forward, um, I'm curious, what are your views of, say, we look through 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future? If we're in a food store or shopping online, where a lot of us have changed our shopping habits, also, we haven't even
Yeah,
started talking about that.
true.
But what do you think the consumers might expect to see very differently in stores than they see today? For example,
Mm.
5, 10 years ago, you weren't going to see plant-based burgers well advertised. You could still find them. I was buying
Hmm.
those because I was
Yeah,
curious 10 years ago,
yeah.
but now it's front and center and it's big news. What, especially with products that that Kerry might be bringing forward without disclosing your industry secrets, what do you think we're going to see that might be meaningfully different in food stores in that time period?
I think the short to medium term future from what I'm seeing is, I think from a taste perspective, continuing to really drive novel and adventurous experiences. COVID and just the environment we currently all live in has limited, right, the ability to travel. So it
Hmm.
probably doesn't come as a surprise that I think in the short term, being able to really immerse people in an eating experience, I think is going to continue to play a critical role first and
Hmm.
foremost. The other two things that came to mind as you were asking that, Chris, are I think plant-based everything really is kind of where we're heading. There is, I think, a challenge and kind of there's a challenge, I think, for a lot of customers in trying to figure out where their right home is, right? Where can they stretch to in plant-based? So I think
Hmm.
what we're seeing is actually a lot of emerging brands being able to really drive that space and drive consumer adoptions um, to really discover, plant-based cream cheese could be the future, and really being able to create experiences that are on par in terms of ingredients, nutrition, and experience with dairy. So you have that choice and can have more choice to choose between. The other thing that actually, as we were talking about transparency, and you were asking this question that did pop up on my mind, is I am also seeing retailers in particular really make commitments around who they're buying products from and what values they stand for. So I think from, in particular, a retail and convenience store perspective, we've seen the likes of Amazon Go sourcing, local products in each of their stores around the country to really hero local favorites and local suppliers. So I think that's one thing, is really that hyper local piece. And then I think the other piece is that retailers embracing more diversity in their supplier base. And I think Target, as an example, is who I've regularly seen on TV over the last few months, sharing and celebrating that diversity of female and people of all races and ethnicities as part of their supplier base.
Yeah, it's this topic of local sourcing has become so important. And as I think you're indicating, also heightened by this little COVID situation that's been happening around the world in supply chain management. And it's interesting when it's a niche. And yes, we can go to the farmer's market and buy stuff, but it sounds like there's a great opportunity growing also, if you will, for almost logistics organizations to figure out, well, how do we do this? How do we have this hyper local sourcing when frankly, the entire food chain is built around massive production areas for carrots that are going to go through distribution centers. When you have 1,000 carrot producers versus 3 going to 1,000 distribution centers, it sounds like a very interesting ecosystem opportunity for companies out there.
Yes, and I have no doubt there are people actively working to figure out how to make it more efficient. And I think this situation all of us are in, especially from a supply chain perspective, where we've relied, right, from cars, let alone food, right, on being able to source specific ingredients and opportunities from different parts of the world, I think has made all of us take a step back and say, how can we, yes, think global and be global in our presence, but also make sure, as we think about future innovation and future product design, that we're really prioritizing, something that we can have better control of, say, within the region, and especially. So, being able to have 50 manufacturing sites here in North America as Kerry, we have a diversity there that I think we've seen a need from our customers to further rely on that, as well as working with other suppliers, right? As our customers need, and I understand that, that factor of wanting dual supply. So I think it's driven more North America centric processing in the short term, at the very least, but also kind of in a great way, I think, kind of challenged all of us to work more closely together, since we all have to be able to supply product to our customers and make sure they have the same consistency, performance, taste, et cetera, that, when they put them in to make their actual process and product.
Yeah, and I think this is a great spirit that I've seen in the sector, and there's more cooperation than there is competition, and a great sense of people, especially thinking about sustainability and how do we all help each other build a more sustainable food system. And I really see that coming through, and it's amazing, like I said, to see it coming through in a large global company like Kerry. I know we've just scratched the surface in all that Kerry's doing. So I know we're going to get a chance and come back and talk again and dive deeper into some of these areas where Kerry's really an amazing leader. And we want to learn more about what Kerry's doing in the sustainability space with specific areas. So I'd really love to come back to you and get you and your colleagues back on this program again sometime in the next few months.
We would love to join you, Chris, anytime. You know where to find me, and would love to bring some of my colleagues along as well, since there's some amazing experts who I think would be able to certainly continue to help us bring life to this discussion.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Shannon. It's been a great discussion today on the FutureFoodCast, and looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.